The orange juice burned down my throat as my grandfather's words echoed across the brunch table. My girl, I'm so glad you're enjoying the apartment I got you. The crystal champagne flute in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every molecule of air between us seemed to freeze, suspended in the terrible silence that followed. My mother's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. My sister's phone clattered to her plate. But it was my father's face that told the real story, his complexion draining to ash, pupils contracting to pinpoints as he stared at my grandfather in naked horror. I live in a basement, I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. The chandelier light above us seemed to intensify, casting harsh shadows across every startled face. What? Grandpa blinked, his smile faltering. I never got any apartment, I said louder, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. My name is Vanessa, I'm 26 and a graphic designer. This is the story of how I reclaimed my inheritance and my self-worth from the people who should have protected both. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with the silver butter knife trembling in my mother's hand. My father's coffee cup hovered halfway to his lips, suspended in time. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. How quickly could he redirect, minimize, explain away what was happening? What are you talking about? Grandpa asked, eyes narrowing as he set down his mimosa with deliberate care. The room shifted as my mother reached for her coffee, hands trembling just enough to spill a drop onto the white tablecloth. My sister froze mid-chew. You never sent me anything, Grandpa, I stated calmly, surprising myself with how level my voice remained. I've been living in a windowless basement for 4 years. The only gift I've gotten from this family in a decade was silence. Grandpa pushed his chair back a few inches. Wait, hold on. His voice hardened. I wired the down payment to your dad 4 years ago. He told me he surprised you with it after graduation. My mouth went desert dry. A chill crawled up my spine like cold fingers, but I forced myself to breathe. Across the table, my father's face had gone from ashen to gray. My mother turned to him, her voice tight. You said you helped her find a cute place downtown. Dad, I asked, locking eyes with the man who had once taught me to ride a bike, what happened to Grandpa's money? He shifted uncomfortably. I meant to. No. I cut in. You meant to keep it. Someone gasped. Grandpa gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, looking like he'd been sucker-punched. The betrayal I'd carried for years was suddenly visible to everyone, impossible to ignore or dismiss. I sat straighter, my voice steady but sharp. You told me to work harder, to stop expecting handouts. All that time you let me scrub other people's floors while you pocketed the money that was meant to give me a start. The air crackled with unspoken truths. My hands still trembled, but I stood up, gathering my dignity around me like armor. I wasn't going to say anything today, I said, but since we are celebrating birthdays, maybe it's time we all stop pretending. I walked out, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Behind me, chairs screeched against hardwood. Voices raised in confusion. But I didn't stop. The hallway outside the restaurant offered blessed quiet, though the rage boiling inside me was anything but. I could still feel every pair of eyes from that table boring into my back. The shock, the guilt, the discomfort they finally deserved to feel. I didn't cry. Not this time. As I walked through the hallway and past the host's stand, I pushed open the heavy glass doors that led to the parking lot. The afternoon sun hit my face like a reminder that there was a world beyond that suffocating brunch table. I turned. He looked older than he had 20 minutes ago, his smile gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen from him in years, pure, unfiltered sorrow. You seriously never got the apartment? I shook my head. I've been renting a basement from a woman who smokes so much her walls are yellow. There's a boiler next to my bed. I pay rent in cash because she doesn't believe in banks. The words flowed now, years of hidden humiliation finally finding voice. I've eaten dinner sitting on the floor more nights than I can count. He swallowed hard. Your father said you didn't want help, that you were being independent. My chest rose with a sharp intake of breath. I asked him for a job lead once and he said, quote, try flipping burgers first. Builds character. That was 2 years ago, right after I lost my first design job in the recession. Grandpa's eyes flicked down. He said you were ungrateful. That you moved into your dream place without even thanking him. A bitter laugh escaped me. I didn't know there was anything to thank him for. He rubbed a hand over his face and sighed. I trusted him. The silence stretched between us, heavy with decades of manipulation. Then he said something that surprised me. I want to fix this. I folded my arms. How? I want to see where you live. My head snapped up. Why? Because if it's as bad as you say, and I believe it is, then he stole from both of us. And I'm done letting anyone lie to me. That night I drove Grandpa to my place. The overhead bulb flickered as I unlocked the door. The scent of old cigarettes and mildew greeted us. I stepped aside. Welcome to my palace. He stepped inside, looking around slowly at the second-hand couch, the leaning bookcase, the stained ceiling tiles, the tiny bed pushed against the laundry machine. His face remained impassive for several seconds. Then he sat on the edge of my bed and exhaled the saddest breath I'd ever heard. This is what you've been living in. I nodded. Since college ended. His eyes grew glassy. He said he was saving the rest for your wedding. I thought it made sense at the time. There is no rest, I said flatly. You gave him $70,000. That money disappeared the moment it hit his account. Grandpa stared at the floor, then back at me with newfound resolve. Not anymore. He stood. Tomorrow we are going to the bank and the lawyer. And after that, I think your dad and I need to have a very long conversation. I didn't smile, but inside something shifted, like I had finally cracked the glass everyone else had been watching me through. I'll drive you home now and pick you up first thing tomorrow, I offered, grabbing my keys from the counter. No need, he said firmly. I'm staying. I'll take the couch. I want to know exactly what he put you through. The next morning, I woke to burnt coffee and Grandpa's voice on the phone with his lawyer. I don't care if it's Sunday, Howard. Find the paperwork. I want every transfer traced, every cent. And I want you to draft a letter stating I no longer authorize Nathan Pritchard to act on my behalf in any financial capacity. His voice was cold steel, a tone I'd never heard him use, not even when Dad wrecked his truck back in high school, or when Mom forgot his medication. This was different. I stood barefoot in the hallway, the concrete floor cold beneath my feet, listening in silence. Something long dormant inside me felt seen. By noon, we sat in a wood-paneled office downtown. Grandpa had pulled strings for an emergency appointment. The banker, a prim woman in her 50s, clicked through records on her screen. I do see the transfer here, she said finally, adjusting her glasses. From Mr. Pritchard's account to Nathan Pritchard, marked as gift for Vanessa's condo. She turned the monitor toward us. The date was there. The exact amount. Everything Grandpa said was true. Then she clicked again. My heart dropped. Another transfer appeared, 5 days later, where my father had moved the entire amount into a separate investment account under his name alone. No mention of me. No note. Nothing. My hands curled into fists. Grandpa stared at the screen in silence, then asked in an unnaturally calm voice, "Can I get a printed copy of all that?" "Yes, sir." When she stepped away, he turned to me. "He betrayed you and he lied to me. This isn't just family drama, Vanessa. It's theft." I nodded slowly. "Don't worry," he added. "I'll handle it." But I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "We'll handle it." That same afternoon, we drove straight to my parents' house. I called my mother first to make sure they would be home, telling her simply that Grandpa and I needed to discuss something important. I hadn't been there in years, the same house where I used to decorate cupcakes with Mom, where Dad once taught me to ride a bike before he started ignoring my calls, where my sister threw a party the week I moved out of the family home and left my things on the lawn when I started college. Grandpa rang the doorbell. Dad opened it, confusion morphing to annoyance, then shock as he registered both of us standing there. "We need to talk," Grandpa said, voice firm. "I'm kind of busy." "Sit down." Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Mom hovered in the background, brows furrowed. My sister peeked down the staircase, sensing tension. We gathered in the living room. Grandpa placed a thick folder on the coffee table. Dad wouldn't even look at it. Then Grandpa dropped the hammer. "You told me Vanessa was living in that apartment I bought her, but the money never made it there. You took it. You stole it. And you lied to your daughter and to me." Dad chuckled nervously. "Come on, Dad, you're blowing this out of." "She's been living in a basement," Grandpa snapped. eating on the floor, working 2 jobs while you used her money to pad your investments. I was holding it for her future. Don't. My voice cut through the room like a blade. Just don't lie again. You told me I was lazy, entitled, that I didn't deserve help. Meanwhile, you were living off money that was meant to give me a chance. Dad's jaw clenched. Grandpa opened the folder and slid the papers toward him. I've already spoken to Howard. We'll pursue legal action if necessary, but you're going to pay back every cent, and you're going to explain yourself in front of the family at the next brunch. No more secrets. No more pretending you're some noble father. Mom whispered, Nathan, tell me this isn't true. He said nothing. Silence answered for him. Grandpa turned to me. You'll move in with me next week. I've already called the realtor. We'll find you a proper place. I stared at my father one last time. He couldn't meet my eyes. The man who once told me, you'll never make it without me, looked small now, shrinking under the weight of truth. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. And that was better. Over the next 6 days, I packed my meager belongings while staying at Grandpa's place. My mother called twice, once to ask if the accusations were true, and again to tell me she was processing everything. My sister texted to ask if I was okay but didn't mention Dad. Nobody defended him. The truth was too overwhelming. The following Sunday, brunch was held at the same restaurant. Grandpa had called everyone personally, explaining there was an important family matter to address. Same table, same faces, but everything had changed. I sat beside Grandpa at the head of the table, his hand resting lightly on mine as we waited. When Dad walked in, he looked like he'd aged 5 years in 1 week. The usual fake charm was gone. Mom stayed close to him, tight-lipped. My sister wore sunglasses indoors like she couldn't bear to witness what was coming. Grandpa stood before anyone could pretend this was a normal Sunday. I'm going to keep this short, he said, his voice carrying through the entire room. I've invited everyone here because last week I learned that a grave injustice was done in my name. 4 years ago, I sent money, my own savings, to help Vanessa start her adult life. I was told she received it. I was told she was thriving. He turned toward me. That was a lie. The room went still. A server froze mid-pour. I felt the familiar burn behind my eyes but held it in. This wasn't about tears anymore. Nathan took that money, Grandpa continued. He invested it, hid it, and then let his daughter suffer in silence, making her feel unworthy, lazy, and dependent, all while pretending he was being a responsible parent. Murmurs rolled through the family. My aunt gasped. My cousin blinked hard, clearly piecing things together. My father shifted in his seat as Grandpa turned fully toward him. You betrayed both of us. And from this moment forward, you will not touch another cent of my estate. Every asset, every trust, every future transaction, it's all being restructured. You've lost that privilege. Slowly, Grandpa pulled a folded document from his jacket and placed it before my father. I want you to read this out loud. Dad stared at the paper like it was poison. Now, Grandpa's voice sharpened. Dad's hands shook as he opened the letter. When he began to read, his voice broke with every sentence. To my family, I stole from my daughter, Vanessa Pritchard. I took funds meant for her future and lied about their purpose. I have wronged her, my father, and the integrity of this family. I accept full responsibility and will pay back the full amount within 6 months. I am deeply sorry. When he finished, there was only silence. No clapping. No gasps. Just a heavy collective breath. And for the first time in years, I looked at my father and didn't feel small. I felt seen. That night at Grandpa's house, we stood on the porch beneath the stars. I still can't believe you never asked for anything, he said. I was done asking, I replied softly. He nodded. I'm sorry I didn't check sooner. I'm not, I said after a pause. Because now I know who's really in my corner. He smiled faintly. You're not going back to that basement. I know. I found a place for you, he added. Downtown. Hardwood floors, real windows. I laughed quietly. That already sounds like a mansion. You deserve it. Maybe I did. But more than anything, I deserved to stop fighting for scraps. The new apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows. The first morning I woke up there, sunlight streamed in like it had been waiting for me. I didn't hear my landlady cursing at her dog. I didn't hear pipes groaning beside my head. Just silence. Peace. I sat on the edge of my new bed, a real bed, not a second-hand futon, and stared at the city skyline. I wasn't used to seeing the sky like this. I wasn't used to feeling safe. That day, I reclaimed something I had buried years ago. I opened my laptop and dusted off a folder hidden behind job applications and bills. The folder labeled Designs. Inside were sketches and layouts I once dreamed would become my career, before the world convinced me stability mattered more than passion. Before my dad looked at my portfolio and said, "It's cute. But when are you going to get serious?" Now I got serious. I applied to design studios and freelance networks. I launched an online portfolio. I used Grandpa's money not just to survive but to start. Weeks passed. Then months. One afternoon I got a call. A local architecture firm had seen my submissions. They were launching a community housing project and needed someone who could think creatively, someone who understood making the most out of small spaces. I smiled. "I've lived that," I told them. When I walked into their downtown office, I wore the same beige coat my mom once called cheap and childish. The receptionist offered me water. The creative director offered me a seat. By the end of the meeting, I had a contract in hand. It wasn't just a job. It was proof that I was never the failure they painted me to be. That living in a basement didn't mean I belonged beneath anyone. 6 months after the confrontation, my father transferred the full $70,000 plus interest directly to my account, as stipulated in the agreement with Grandpa's lawyer. He made no contact beyond a formal email confirming the transaction. I used part of it to establish an emergency fund and invested the rest, properly this time, with my name on every document. Months later, it was my turn to host brunch. Not in a restaurant. Not in someone else's house. Mine. Real plates. Real laughter. Real sunlight streaming through windows that were mine. Grandpa brought flowers and set them in a vase I'd bought with my first paycheck. My cousin, who used to roll her eyes when I talked about art, leaned in asking about color palettes and mood boards. My mother came, tentative at first but warmer as the day went on. We weren't close yet, but she was trying. My sister arrived with a housewarming gift and genuine congratulations. We'd started texting regularly again, rebuilding what had been lost. Dad wasn't there. He hadn't been back since the day of the letter. He repaid the money on time, but his apologies stayed on paper. Despite my mother's gentle suggestions about reconciliation, I made it clear that I wasn't ready and might never be. Some relationships can't be fixed with money alone. That was fine with me. Some people's absence is the greatest piece of all. As I passed around fresh scones, I caught Grandpa watching me with a soft smile. "This," he said, "this is what I imagined." I touched his hand. "Me too."